It's always a little scary when one of your good friends introduces you. You don't know what they're going to say. I feel like a Baptist preacher too. I was thinking about this in the back. All the front rows are empty and everybody's sitting in the back. It's my second time in Cherokee County this week, and I love to come to Cherokee County for two reasons. One, it's close to my house. I live in Forsyth County, so it's an easy drive over here. Secondly, y'all are real conservatives. Y'all get it. Y'all pay attention. You elect good folks. And it's an easy message for me to give to you all about who I am, what I stand for, and what my background is. And so I always love the opportunity to come here. How many of y'all were at the debate on Monday night? Good bit of y'all. Appreciate it. It was a great opportunity. I love those debates. We got in the car, and my wife isn't out on the campaign trail a lot because we got 3 young boys. But she goes, "I think you look like you enjoyed that. Is that?" And I said, "Absolutely, I enjoyed doing it." Right? This is what this race in politics is about, showing the contrast, showing what you can do. What are the big ideas you can come up with? What are the ways that you can make the system better? And so it's been an incredible opportunity for my family to travel the state. We worked for 12 months running for lieutenant governor. I started this process 12 months ago at ground zero. Probably nobody in this room knew who Geoff Duncan was in this county or anywhere in the state. Fast forward 12 months, hundreds of speeches, thousands of supporters, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of contributions. Fast forward 12 months, and all of those line items, the polls show us tied, and some of the polls show us pulling ahead in the lead. And here's why. Because I think it starts with how I got here. It starts with what my background is. My first paycheck came on a baseball field. Great place to have your first paycheck. I was a baseball player and a football player in high school over in Alpharetta, and I got a scholarship to Georgia Tech my senior year in high school. And let's talk about that for a second. How many of y'all are Georgia fans? All right, so let's talk about that for a second. Georgia didn't offer me a scholarship. All right, so I was taking good care of my parents. And secondly, the night that Georgia Tech came to watch me pitch in high school, I threw a 9-inning no-hitter with 17 strikeouts. Guess where I went to college? Went to college, played in the College World Series in 1994, played with some incredible athletes, Nomar Garciaparra, Jason Veritek, a whole crew of folks, and learned a lot about baseball and learned a lot about life and school. And my wife and I both went to college together. We had met in high school. And so when I came home one night in my junior year, the Florida Marlins had called, and they took me in the Major League Draft. And it took me about 0.0 seconds to tell them yes. My dad's like, "You probably should have waited a little longer and tried to negotiate." I was like, "Dad, it was a lifelong dream." So we signed our first professional contract, and I spent 6 seasons playing professional baseball all over the country. Wife and I got married right away, and we traveled all over the place: Florida, Maine, Calgary, Canada, just everywhere. And it was an incredible experience for us. And here's the thing: I learned a lot about baseball, learned a lot about how to throw strikes and get guys out, but I also learned a lot about working hard. Right? Something that we all realize, that work ethic is really what separates a lot of people in life. Right? It's the amount of effort you put into something is a direct function of usually what you get out of it. And so I learned how to work hard and maximize the talent that I had. The second thing I learned was how to chase a dream. Right? Chasing a dream isn't about just waking up and somebody handing it to you one day. Chasing a dream is about waking up every day and finding success and taking steps forward, chipping away at it every single day. And so I took that mindset, those life lessons, and I took them from the baseball field. And when my career ended, my wife and I started our first business. And I took that mindset over to the business world, and now I've taken it into politics. And so when my career ended, I had shoulder surgery, and they tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Look, your career's over. It's time to move on." And I was ready. I'd written a business plan to start a company. And so 2 weeks after I got released, we started our first business out of our home, my wife and I. And we called it our global headquarters. It was our living room. And, we had a great idea. We wanted to work hard. And so we got to kind of start chipping away at the American dream, like many of y'all in this room. And so we grew the business, and we hired a bunch of folks, and we moved into new offices. And what was neat for us is we were experiencing the American dream. But something that really was eye-opening for us is we got to watch those around us experiencing the American dream. I mean, here we were in our late 20s, hiring folks and having them be successful with us. They were able to set up for retirement. We had families and folks that were working with us that were making enough money and successful enough to send their kids off to college. And probably most humbling were the folks that came to work for us right out of college. And we were their first taste of kind of the free markets. We were their first taste of what it was like to have a real job. And so we were excited to be a part of that process, and it was very energizing. And one day somebody came and tapped me on the shoulder and said, Geoff, we'd love to buy your business, and we ultimately sold the company. Took us, my wife and I, into new ideas and new opportunities, but nothing said politics. Right? There was no point in my life where I thought about politics. I didn't have the right last name. My parents weren't in politics. Certainly didn't go to law school. No offense to lawyers, but that usually seems to be a precursor for a lot of folks that are in politics for a long time. And I just didn't have this big appetite for diving into it. But I learned how to be a Republican where most of y'all did, at the kitchen table. Right? I learned how to be a Republican, with my parents teaching me conservative values, and I learned how to be a Republican raising my 3 boys and running a business. And so nothing said politics until we walked into, we go to North Point Church over in Alpharetta. Now go to Brownsbridge, which is a satellite of it. But we walked in, Brooke and I, about 8 years ago, and Andy Stanley had a series called Recovery Road. And it was just a lazy Sunday in the summer, and we dropped the kids off at Sunday school, and we walk into the church, and here's what the service was. It said, look, if we're going to recover as a country, it's got to begin with us. We've all gotten so good at complaining, but we're not doing enough about it ourselves. Right? We're complaining about education. We're complaining teachers and principals and curriculum. But we're not spending enough time with our own kids at our own kitchen table every single night. We talk about bankrupting our country. Too many politicians are bankrupting our governments, and they are. But too many of us are bankrupting ourselves. Right? We're spending money on things we can't afford. We're maxing out credit cards. Until we make it a priority in our own lives, we're not going to truly make a difference. And so the call to action was this. Look, go make a change in your family, in your community, or go run for office. And for those of y'all at the debate, you got to see my wife there. I looked at her sweet face in the parking lot, and I said, Brooke, we're going to run for office. And I kind of backed up a couple steps. And she said, well, we don't know anything about running for office. I said, that's what's going to make us good. Fast forward, we ran against a longtime incumbent in the State House, former chairman of the Insurance Committee, director of important stuff down there. We launched into a race, and if you think I'm the underdog as Lieutenant Governor, you should have seen me in that race. But we worked hard. We knocked on 4,000 doors. We made 6,000 phone calls, and we ended up winning that race in 2012 by 55 votes. We won for a couple of reasons. One, we worked hard. I think we had a great message. But probably most importantly, because Forsyth County got sick and tired of electing somebody who said and did one things in rooms like this on Saturday mornings, but then got in their car and drove down to the Capitol and did something completely different when they were in session. And so I was a product of that. And we're seeing that momentum, right? We've seen that play out here in this state, and we certainly have seen that play out in this country. And so when I walked into the General Assembly, into the House of Representatives in 2013 to get sworn in, I had my wife and my 3 boys. When those doors opened, I realized I didn't know a single person in the room. There's 179 other people I didn't know. But here's what I did know. I knew what my principles were. I knew what my conservative values were. And so I walked into that room, and I decided at that moment I wanted to be good at the policy, and I wanted to ignore the politics. I got sent there to dive into the policy by the folks in Forsyth County. And so over my 5 short years in the General Assembly, that's what I did. I wrote 3 really big ideas. One was the Cargo Theft Act. Georgia was third in the nation in cargo theft. Organized crime had moved into Georgia, taken over our shipping lanes, and were stealing tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars worth of cargo each year out of our tractor trailers. Because our law said simply this: if you stole a truck with expensive cargo like medication or flat screen TVs or computers, you went to jail for stealing the truck, but not the cargo. How silly is that? Right? So these thugs would get recycled by crime families over and over and over again, because if they got caught, they'd go to jail for a couple of weeks or a couple of months. Changed the law and said if you steal $1 million or more of cargo in Georgia off of a tractor trailer, you go to jail for 20 years. In 1 year, cargo theft went down 68% in the state of Georgia. In 1 year. I had a reporter come up to me and say, Mr. Duncan, you keep championing that this is making a big difference in Georgia. Aren't these criminals just going to other states? At which point I said, mission accomplished. My wife tapped me on the shoulder when I got home and said, you probably could have said something a little nicer than that. But it was true, right? I mean, come on. I didn't get hired by the state of South Carolina to go make a difference. I got hired by the state of Georgia to go make a difference. The second was Michael's Law. An unfortunate accident or situation. An 18-year-old young man was beaten to death from my district, was beaten to death by a bouncer in Statesboro, Georgia, his second week on campus at Georgia Southern. And a bunch of bad decisions made that night, but ultimately what I realized were the law said that bouncers didn't have to be 21 years old. and the 19-year-old that beat him to death was a bouncer in this bar. The most disturbing part of it all was that 102 times an ambulance showed up to this bar, and nobody did anything about it in a 3-year period of time. 72 alcohol citations were written to this bar in those same 3 years, and nobody did anything about it. And when I met with the Department of Revenue, they simply said, we have no visibility. If these bars are breaking the law and getting cited for it, we have no visibility, so we just rubber stamp their alcohol license each and every year. We changed that law. They now have 45 days to be accountable to the Department of Revenue when they are given a citation for an alcohol-related issue. Last but not least was a rural health care bill. Georgia, like many other states, every state, has a rural health care crisis. We have 54 rural hospitals that every day don't even know if they can keep their doors open, right? And more or less even look for opportunities to improve their services and access. So I wrote a bill based on some conservative principles that said this: we're going to allow corporations and citizens to write checks directly to rural hospitals. So you as a citizen can write a check directly to a rural hospital, and in return you now get 100% tax credit. 100% tax credit. And with federal deductions, it becomes an actual moneymaker for you. And here's the most conservative principle of this. These rural hospitals no longer are waiting for a handout from a government program that says, hey, here's your money, but now you got to see these new types of patients, and here's these 5 new strings we're attaching to it. These dollars show up to these rural hospitals, and they get to deploy those dollars the way them and their community wants them to. Right? No added government programs. We're not building up the size of a program. We're not hiring anybody else in the state of Georgia. We're simply empowering communities to solve their own problems. And we're seeing great stories play out. Claxton, Georgia, a struggling rural hospital, now has over $1 million that has shown up via these tax contributions, or these contributions from the community. And they're buying new surgical equipment that's allowing them to create new revenue streams without having to lean into a government program year after year after year. Conservative ideas, new ideas to solve old problems. I think that needs to be a big part of what Georgia does going forward. So why Lieutenant Governor? Right? I'm 43, just turned 43. Got a great family, had a successful business career, had some wins in the General Assembly. So why in the world would you run for Lieutenant Governor? Because that's not normally the track, right? You normally try to become a chairman of a committee, or you normally try to climb up through the leadership in the House that you're in. And I'm simply running for Lieutenant Governor because I believe I can do it better, I can do it bolder, and I can create a culture that rewards good policy over good politics at the Georgia Capitol. Something every Republican in every room I go into wants to see happen in the state of Georgia. Policy over politics. The problems your community has and this state has are too big to play petty politics in a back room somewhere and not take on the policy issues that we have. My background, my perspective, my business principles allow me to be a great arbiter in the room, a great example, a great team leader in the Georgia State Senate to set this policy over politics platform. Is it going to be hard? Absolutely. I'm going to trade, the currency I'm going to trade as Lieutenant Governor is not going to be if you showed up at my fundraiser the night before, or if you publicly endorsed me in the newspaper, or if you held your nose and voted yes on enough pieces of garbage that you promised everybody else you would vote no on back in the district. That's not the currency I'm going to trade. The currency I'm going to trade is policy. You want to chair a committee? Show me that you know how to take a good idea and make it great. Show me that you truly understand what school choice principles look like if you want to be in the education committee. Truly show me that this is about spending cuts. We got to look for opportunities to spend less as a state if you want to be around the budget process. And so I'm going to take it serious as Lieutenant Governor. And here's what's going to happen. When I win this election, I'll have 4 years to be on display for the state of Georgia, policy over politics. And Georgia's going to have a decision in 4 years. They're going to say, that Duncan guy, he's just so concerned about policy. We want a better politician to be in that spot. My guess is that's not going to happen. My guess is Georgia's going to point back to the Georgia State Senate and say, you know what, that's the golden standard. That's what we not only want other folks in the Georgia Capitol to operate like, but that's what we want our local government to operate like. We want them to have policy discussions everywhere they go. I'll close with this part and then take some questions. This race is a sharp contrast. I don't know if the memo got here in the last 12 months, but I was not the next guy in line to run for this race. Right? I'm not. There's about 7,000 people probably between me and the Lieutenant Governor spot when I started this. But here's what I do know. I walk into rooms like this hundreds of times, and I don't walk away from the fact that I don't have a long political resume. My opponents all have long political resumes. They've served in elected office for decades and decades, and some of them decades. I walk into rooms like this, and I'm proud to champion a business resume, a real resume, One that highlights that I'm used to signing the front of a paycheck and not just the back of a paycheck. I don't run from that. I'm excited about it. I voted no on over $1 billion worth of tax increases in 5 short years at the Georgia Capitol. $1 billion worth of tax increases. I got to tell you, I got scars on my back to show you. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. But it was the right thing to do. And I didn't vote no on these tax increases to grandstand, or to run to Twitter, or to run to Facebook. I voted no because I promised 4,000 people when I knocked on their door in Forsyth County that that's what I was going to do. When you say you believe in smaller government and lower taxes, you got to mean it. The other opponents in this race all voted yes on that stuff. And that is a huge area of contrast. Y'all heard it play out at the debate for those that were there. Right? David Schaefer was a part of the conference committee, one of 3 senators that hand wrote in a back room the hotel motel tax that added on to the gas tax. A $5 hotel motel fee that is a $250 million tax on every community in Georgia, on every hotel room, every single day of the year. They wrote that bill, dropped it on our desk at 11 o'clock at night, and had us vote on it 1 hour later. Not because it was a good idea, not because anybody in Georgia thought it was a good idea. They did it because they thought they could get away with it, and guess what? They did. But we as Republicans, if we want to keep majorities in this state, we've got to stop taxing people because we can get away with it. We've got to stop taxing people because we can get away with it. Look, if I win this race, and I think we're going to win, it's because communities like this come alive. It's because they believe me when I tell them that I believe that policy over politics may be the best thing we can do for the state of Georgia. And we start tackling big issues like education. The best thing we can do in the state of Georgia is give a child in K through 12 a quality education, because it gives them an opportunity to provide for themselves and their family for a lifetime. We've got to do a better job of educating kids. We've got to do a better job of understanding that we can't educate kids in rural Georgia like they live inside the perimeter, and vice versa. We've got to allow school choice to start at the kitchen table. We've got to allow parents to be empowered to make good, strong decisions. And in communities like mine in Forsyth County with great education systems, school choice for my wife and I is, do we drive them to school or do we put them on the bus? But school choice in some of these rural communities or outlying communities that have struggling systems that continue to fail year after year after year need to be held accountable. If I win this race, it's because rooms like this, communities like this, believe me. And you take a yard sign, you sign up on a clipboard and you make calls for us, or you send out emails, or you share stuff on social media, and you tell everybody you know on May 22nd to vote for Geoff Duncan. You tell folks at church, at work, in your neighborhood. You tell them that Geoff Duncan is a policy over politics guy, and he deserves 4 years to go down to the Georgia Capitol and do exactly what he said he's going to do. TeamDuncan.org is our website. I would love to have your vote and your support and your prayers between now and then. Thank you so much. Let me take any questions if y'all have any. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I almost consider it child abuse to allow our kids in high school to drop out when they do. I mean, you're closing your door to future opportunities. What can we do about the high dropout rates?
Families have a lot to do with that, right? We need to create some more accountability in the community. We need to allow, look, if my kid drops out, I'm thinking as a parent, I've got a lot to do with that, right? And we've got to look for opportunities to continue to show these kids. Look, a quality K-12 education is magic pixie dust. It doesn't matter what your economic situation is. It doesn't matter where you live. If you get a quality K-12 education. Look, not every community looks like Cherokee County or Forsyth County. It's different all across the state as I travel. But we need to have families, we need to have parents and guardians and business leaders in the community to have mentoring programs. There's an opportunity. I wrote an op-ed called The 4 C's. I don't mean to bore you with this if you've heard it before. But it's called Churches, Charities, Corporations, and Citizens. I think the 4 C's ought to be the front lines of defense against situations in and around poverty and other problems that we face in society. Government is not the answer to the problems that we face in our state and in our country. The 4 C's come to work every day on issues like this: dropout. A church or a charity or a corporation or just a citizen concerned comes to the scene with things like volunteerism, innovation, passion, and probably most importantly, exit strategy. Things government programs could never be a part of or never be good at. And so education is one of those areas where I think we can continue to do a better job utilizing the 4 C's to help build that dream, that vision in that child's head that dropping out today might be the worst mistake you'll ever make about future opportunities. And so, yeah, we need to continue to do better. I don't think the state is necessarily the fix to it. You know, we talked about there was an amendment that came through a couple of years ago that was on the ballot, and it failed, the opportunity school districts. And there was some conversations about that, about these constant schools that continue to fail year after year after year. And one of the Board of Regents members and I had lunch one time, and they talked about these failing schools have some of them have 60% of the kids don't come to school. The average attendance is only 40% in these failing schools in some of them. How do you even think about, you could change the principal, the curriculum, and give every kid a laptop. If 60% of the kids aren't at school, you've got a problem. To me, the community needs to step up and help to be a part of that change. Yes, ma'am.
I would like to ask you the same question I asked the other candidate. Joshua Coon had a proposal to have all votes in the Senate recorded. How do you feel about that? And also, how do you feel about the illegal alien situation? And would you allow legislation to come through dealing with the illegal aliens? Because that's not been tabled for sure on the table.
So I started this process 12 months ago, really utilizing the fact that I think transparency is a good thing, right? So we talked about the hand votes, and yes, those need to be recorded votes. In the House, they are recorded. And it never made sense to me. Like, I can't imagine, and you did see some folks, this is going to sound funny, but when some of these tough amendments came up on the Senate floor, people look like they're on ice skates going backwards because there's a camera that shines down from the top, right? Yes, we need to have recorded votes. I also championed 12 months ago putting cameras in all the committee rooms in the Senate, which was just crazy to think that the Senate was having committee meetings, not having them broadcasted and archived like the House was. I mean, look, you shouldn't have to quit your job or take 2 days off work to go down and listen to a committee meeting with the technology we've got here today. I mean, we all get that. So I was glad to see that happen.
Wasn't that also spurred by Josh McCoon because he started recording them with his phone?
Could have been. I hope every legislator thinks it's a good idea, because it is. So along the way, I hear this term, illegal immigration. And for me, that's an oxymoron. Immigration is a controlled process, regulated controlled process. Illegal is an uncontrolled scenario. So for me, combining those two words doesn't make sense. Look, we need some federal intervention in the process. I think we have a president now who's paying attention to the issue and setting up hopefully what is going to be a strong but very clear process for immigration in this country that everybody in all states hold to. When I hear these stories about sanctuary cities and whatnot and breaking the rule of law, I'm a rule follower. I've just always been that way. We need to follow the federal law and make sure that all of our communities in this state follow the federal law.
So would you be in favor of requiring Georgia cities to honor detainers from ICE?
I'm not certain I understand that question.
Okay, so if you have a criminal in your jail and ICE has a detainer for them, then they request the jails notify them so they can pick them up before they are released. Some of the cities are not honoring detainers. They claim they want warrants, and ICE does not give warrants. They only have detainers.
My answer is yes, absolutely. I would honor it.
Okay, thank you.
Y'all are an easy crowd today. I was expecting some hard questions. TeamDuncan.org, May 22nd. Tell everybody you know. We got a real shot to win this. We got a real shot to win it. And then y'all get to hold me accountable for this policy over politics format. And let's hold everybody accountable. If we do this right in the state of Georgia, right, the next 10 years are going to be a great opportunity for the state of Georgia, right? We got great growth and we got good fiscal accountability. We're in the right spot. If we do this right in Georgia, we're not only going to lead ourselves, but we're going to lead an entire nation on solving some big problems. Thank you all so much. Nope, that's it. Thank you.